Drivers are demanding more regulations for companies like Uber and Lyft.
The drivers are protesting against their companies, saying Uber is taking advantage of them because no regulations are in place.
The amount that society is willing to pay you changes on a rapid basis. And as a result, now you're part of truly unbridled capitalism. That can be scary because on one day you might make $16 an hour, on the next day it might be $8.
And the ability of individuals to choose when they're going to work because they have it within their control. They just turn on their intermediary's platform, the app, and then they make themselves available. That's really an innovation in our economy.
Oh, the freedom is number one. I can go and drive when and where I want to.
So the flexibility that this working arrangement is bringing to a lot of people who were displaced in the recession, this is the way they've been able to come back into the workforce.
If my children have something come up, I can say, okay, this is my last ride for the day. I've got to go take care of my children.
We also find people who do some work for TaskRabbit, doing home repairs perhaps, or painting, and they also drive for Uber or Lyft.
So the way this economy functions is that people just do jobs, one-off jobs.
They have the freedom and flexibility to choose when and where and under what conditions they work.
It's very different from a traditional economy where people work for a corporation for 20 or 30 years or their whole life and perform whatever function their boss tells them to do.
I can kind of do my own thing, set my own schedule, set my own goals, and then achieve them.
It's different from, say, part-time work. It's different from on-call work. It's different even from traditional independent contracting.
The gig economy makes it easy for people to become drivers one day, become people that will deliver food another day, and return to a 9-to-5 work on the third day.
The fact that I can be an Uber driver every day of the week if I wanted to does not mean that I will always have work and always get paid.
Often I've found workers get left out of these discussions and their interests get left out, and I want to know whether or not workers can end up benefiting from it.
Discontent with Uber certainly isn't new. In fact, several drivers have band together in a class action lawsuit against the company.
The suit was trying to get to the heart of whether Uber drivers were employees entitled to reimbursement for expenses or contract workers required to take care of all their own expenses.
One of the burning issues in the sharing economy is this question of what should be the status of somebody who is working in that part of the economy.
But determining whether or not a person, a worker, should be classified as a 1099 independent contractor or a W-2 employee is complicated.
Some of them look both like employees in some regards and independent contractors in other regards. We have a new set of circumstances and we have laws that are having a lot of trouble responding to them.
We have a regulatory framework which is really rooted in the 1920s and the 1940s.
And so trying to fit workers into one of these two ancient categories is complicated and getting more complicated as the economy continues to change.
It's like fitting a round peg into a square hole.
And we don't have a clear answer yet from any federal court or any federal agency on whether the workers in the online gig economy are employees or independent contractors.
Handy has a number of people that work as home cleaners, and they provide home cleaning services. And Handy wanted to offer them training to advance their skills, but found out that if it were to educate its independent contractors, they may be recategorized as employees.
Because of the benefits, that's, whether it's health insurance, retirement insurance, benefits, the cost of compliance, it is more expensive for a company to receive services through an employee than through an independent contractor.
The differential can be anywhere from 25% to a third of the labor cost.
If you acquire an individual to go through drug testing, if you do a criminal background check, that all starts looking more like an employee status than independent contractor. But the laws really are discouraging that right now because the sharing economy companies do not want to start tipping over the line into employment status. So they'd rather say, I'm not going to do the background check.
Independent contractors are not able to receive training and the means of work from their employers. Employees can.
You can only pull risks of and get group health plans for your employees, and you can't do that for independent contractors. You can't provide 401ks.
The federal government has a number of tests that are being used to determine employee versus contractor status.
And I've seen summaries of the law that have as many as 20 factors trying to establish whether someone is an independent contractor or an employee. Giving the workers materials with which to work is another factor which might cause them to be recharacterized.
It's very difficult to predict how a court or an agency or regulators are going to come out on a particular issue.
When you have a big company like Uber or Lyft operating in 50 states, they have to deal with all of these different classifications, all of these different potential class action lawsuits.
The compliance attorneys at the companies and the outside attorneys who work in this area have a very complicated job.
Plus the threat that the federal government might step in and say, you've misclassified all your drivers as contractors, they ought to be employees.
And that, of course, slows innovation. It slows expansion. It makes expansion more expensive because you got to bring in the lawyers.
We're debating right now what we can do to allow this segment of the economy to succeed, to allow innovation to advance, but to also ensure that workers not only aren't disadvantaged, but that they get a fair share of the product of that innovation.
Let's try to find a compromise that will allow the sharing economy companies to continue to operate, to continue to innovate, to continue to grow.
What we were hoping to do was to find a middle ground and provide these workers with some set of protections, but not the kinds of protections that aren't really appropriate to the way this economic sector works.
So a peer-to-peer employee should be able to get training, because training is one way that the companies that employ these people can really improve society.
And it could take years and years and years to sort out who is going to be an employee and who's going to be an independent contractor.
Initially, there were a lot of investment by venture capitalists in the sharing economy, and by the reports that I've been reading, that has been declining. And I think it's because of the legal uncertainty. You don't know whether your investment is going to be lost because a government agency or a court case shuts you down.
We've had competing decisions at the state level. California came out one way, Florida came out another way.
But until something happens, either years of litigation to resolve the issue of employee versus independent contractor or some sort of legislative solution, the uncertainty is going to continue to stifle innovation for years ahead.
Congress is in the position where it could create a new category of work that is distinct from W-2 employee and 1099 contractor that makes more sense for today's economy.
Uber drivers went on strike today in protest against the company's recent fare cuts. They say Uber keeps cutting how much drivers make on each ride while increasing how much the company gets.
I will just ask American public, if their salary is decreased by 45% in 2 years, how will they feel?
It's very easy for the contractors to enter and exit different platforms. If they don't like what one company is doing, they just download the app of another company and start working.
No single driver can go to Uber and say, no, you can't charge $10 for that ride, I want $20 for that ride. So without that power, they're going to be in a position where they're not going to be able to bargain for health care, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, safety and health.
In this case, I think that it's best to allow people this opportunity, get through hard periods in their life, make ends meet when they need to, bring a little bit extra home.
Well, if workers can come together and organize themselves and bargain collectively with the intermediaries, they will be able to read themselves into a collective compact.
And I think that mobility by itself means that the ability to unionize and bargain collectively is not necessary for this sector.
We have a very serious problem in our economy right now of people who have fallen out of the middle class, are in low-wage service jobs, their incomes have gone down, their retirement hopes are gone.
You have a choice whether or not to work in the gig economy. And I'm glad there's at least that choice, because some people rely on it to get through a hard period, and otherwise would become wardens of the state or impoverished or fall into a far worse circumstance.
So it depends on how you define benefit. Is benefit, I am earning a wage? Or is benefit, I was employed working 40 hours a week, earning a $20 an hour wage, working at a manufacturing plant, and now I'm earning $8 an hour with no benefits, working 20 plus hours more.
I do what I want when I want. Like I work when I want. My life has changed a lot since I've been doing this.
At the pace that this technology is increasing, automated cars will be a well-known facet of our roadways in 10 years or so. Efficiencies in the labor market might be reducing the jobs that they have.
There were people whose jobs it was to tap on windows, wake people up for shift work in factory towns. I don't think anybody's missing those. Lamplighters. These are professions that did exist at one time and just simply don't exist anymore.
To me, it's my first step in the American dream, and I felt like I haven't had that before.